First off, folks, let me be very clear tonight. The election in 2020 was rigged and stolen. All the madness we see from the Biden administration, 2 million illegals, rising gas prices, unbelievable inflation, the brink of war. All that started right here in Georgia when our governor caved and allowed radical Democrats to steal our election.
That was former Senator David Perdue of Georgia at an explosive debate last night in the state's Republican primary for governor. Perdue, who was endorsed by Donald Trump, is challenging his former ally, Governor Brian Kemp. And as you can see, he went all in on the big lie, accusing Kemp of, quote, caving to radical Democrats by certifying Joe Biden's win in the state of Georgia. Now, I want to remind you that Georgia counted the 2020 election presidential ballots not once, not twice, but 3 whole times. And every single time, Joe Biden won. But that doesn't stop Perdue from trying to blame Kemp for what, like math? Another topic that came up repeatedly last night concerned a person who was actually not even there. Stacey Abrams, the Democrat, whom either Kemp or Perdue will actually face off against in the general elections. And Abrams said on Twitter, quote, I missed my invitation to tonight's GOP debate, yet I seem to be center stage. Joining us now is Greg Bluestein, a political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He's also the author of the great book, Flipped, How Georgia Turned Purple and Broke the Monopoly of Republican Power. And Greg, the 2 Republican candidates for governor had a verbal slugfest. I guess I don't say that word often enough. They had a fight with words last night in the debate. I mean, what's going on here? What were their major arguments against each other last night?
Yeah, it's the wildest Georgia debate I've ever been a part of. I was one of the panelists, and it went on for 25 minutes before we even were able to really get some questions in. And just as you saw from the get-go, David Perdue falsely said the 2020 election was rigged. He was going after one core constituency right here, the Donald Trump first voters, the voters that put Donald Trump's endorsement above all else. He was trying to get under Governor Kemp's skin to fluster him, and it seemed to work. But this is a David Perdue you're seeing who's kind of backed into a corner. He's behind in the polls. He's behind in fundraising. Governor Kemp can kind of snap his fingers and get media attention because he's got bill signings and executive powers and all sorts of abilities to command attention right now. So it's David Perdue who is just brawling, trying to do anything he can to gain traction. And in a debate like this, he did fluster Brian Kemp. He did get under his skin. He did seem to try to move the needle that way.
It seems odd, I mean, particularly because of the way we've talked about Georgia politics most days, to see Brian Kemp as sort of like the person upholding election integrity and results from 2020. Because of what happened during the 2018 election against Stacey Abrams and the subsequent lawsuits. I mean, he's not exactly the poster child for election integrity from, the perspective of some folks. But in this particular debate, you have Perdue say 2020 was rigged. And this is the guy who rigged it. I mean, how is that resonating with voters on the ground, given the fact that David Perdue already was rejected by voters two whole times?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it was kind of the flipping of the tables because not only on the issues of elections, but also just David Perdue blaming Brian Kemp for all sorts of things that Republicans usually blame Democrats for inflation, for rising fuel prices, for international conflicts, all the things that you hear Republicans blame Joe Biden for, he was blaming Brian Kemp for. So a very odd debate where, again, he's going after a small sliver of the electorate that he thinks if they come out in droves can actually affect the outcome, can actually flip this election in his favor, because right now he's double digits behind in every single public poll we've seen. And it's putting Kemp in a weird position because he also knows that even though Donald Trump will never endorse him, he needs to win a significant number of Donald Trump supporters. So he was up there saying, hey, I know that there's election fraud. It just wasn't significant. It just wasn't widespread. The election wasn't rigged. And of course, he is, as you mentioned, he was the former Secretary of State during that 2018 campaign. So his counterattack to David Perdue is, I know elections law a lot better than you do.
It's ironic. I would say irony works here. One of the other things that's happened recently is Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene testified on Friday in a case brought by voters who want her banned from seeking office because of the role she played in planning, allegedly, the January 6th insurrection. So I want to play a clip because I feel like we have to keep this in mind when we're looking at all the races in the state of Georgia. Again, Marjorie Taylor Greene was elected in the same election that they're calling fraud. So let's take a listen to some of her testimony from Friday.
Prior to the inauguration in 2021, did you advocate for martial law with the President of the United States?
I don't
President
recall.
Trump?
I don't recall.
Are you saying it didn't happen, or you're saying you don't recall one way or the other?
I don't recall ever discussing that.
Are the folks in Georgia buying that? Would you actually forget if you ever called for martial law? I feel like you would remember that.
I'll say that very few people in the courtroom, and I was one of them who were in the room, bought that because she was played repeatedly her own voice, her own tweets, were shown on the screen, and time again, she said, I don't recall writing that. I don't recall saying that. Oh, that was taken out of context. Oh, that footage could have been manipulated. And in this case, of course, now we're seeing reporting that she texted some of Donald Trump's top aides, pushing them to impose martial law. So certainly we now see her own text messages in court documents that show that she texted these not that long ago, right? This wasn't years ago. This was last year. Will it matter to the judge? It's very hard for these challengers to keep her off the ballot. It's not looking likely that the judge will rule in the challenger's favor, but certainly now there's a trove of court testimony to pour over for the time going forward.
I feel like you would remember that. But again, voters of Georgia, they get to decide. But she was elected in the election that they are all complaining about. Greg Bluestein, I appreciate you, as always, for being here. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.